According to the newspaper Millennial, Whitexicans is a term used to refer to people that show pride or admiration towards Mexico abroad, but inside their country they adopt classist and racist attitudes. This happens because they have a sense of superiority towards the others, thing that has happened since the start of history in Mexico. Cosas de Whitexicans is a Twitter account with around 60,000 followers. It has become popular in recent months for its mocking criticism of racism and classism in Mexico. As well, Revista Merca 2.0 shares that the admins of this account actually said that the name of the page does not refer necessarily to skin tone, but to the privileged minority. And I say minority because most part of the population in Mexico lives in poverty.
First, it's important to mention the pre-Hispanic era since this was the first step for indigenous discrimination. According to historian Luis Portillo's research, Aztecs had a social order where gods were perceived as the top power of the pyramid.
Then came the emperor, then the nobility, the merchants, artisans, and at the bottom the slaves who were summoned by debt and worked until the debt was considered paid. Later on, with the appearance of Spanish, the Aztecs thought they were gods, making them think they were superior, yet it was only caused by their physical appearance.
In the book Razas y Racismo by Juan Comas, history of racism is mentioned, for example, in the colonial regime when the Indios and Negros were located at the bottom of the social pyramid. That's why they were mostly exploited and discriminated. To be part of the ruling classes, it was required to have been born Spanish, European, or Criollo. The thing in here is that in this sector of the population, who was the affected one, besides being discriminated, they were also slaves, just because they had different physical characteristics, mainly skin, and other phenotypes such as light eyes and height.
Another important historical process that led to the actual situation is independence, mainly after it. As seen in the social sciences magazine Desacatos from Mónica Moreno's research called El Archivo del Estudio del Racismo en México, racism and classism is reinforced after this in 1821. This period not only brought the triumph of liberalism and the modern idea of equality, but the fact that everyone had to share one culture in order to be equal. So, the indigenous people were a problem.
In other words, there was no longer a space for indigenous people. There was only space for one culture, the mestizo. So yes, the indigenous groups not only kept being differentiated by the political and social order that were imposed to by the colonial regime, but that different condition they were known for became a defect in something negative to eradicate.
Mexico is a racist and classist country since the beginning of history until today. We realize this with the historical processes mentioned before, and we recognize and realize it is something imposed to us since many years ago, mainly by society. It is something that we have been dragging for a long time, and it hasn't received the importance it should.
Because of this, it's been increasing too, and we may not even notice it, since we see it as something we are used to, and manifestations of this issue are still coming up, like in the Twitter account we talk about.
I experienced a case of discrimination. Last year I moved to Houston to study high school. Each time I mentioned I was Mexican, people would make comments like, "Are you really Mexican? You're white. You're like from the United Kingdom. Is there internet in Mexico? Are you an immigrant?" People assumed that Mexicans were completely broke and that they didn't have education at all.
A solution is not that easy since we've been struggling with this since many years ago, and it has to do a lot with education, and people have grown with these ideas since it has been something imposed by society, but it's all about respect. We cannot change the world, but we can change ourselves, starting by avoiding laughing or even stopping at racist or classist jokes, avoiding comments of this type while referring to others, and making people conscious and aware about the things they say, and telling them it's not funny but racist or classist. This is an everyday thing. We gotta work on it and start empowering everybody.